Hey, what's up, everybody? Championship Leadership Podcast. And today I'm really excited. We got Alec Lace. He's the host of the #1 Apple iTunes podcast, First Class Fatherhood. And thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Nate, thanks for having me on board today. It's an honor to be with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I always love asking this question. So the name of the podcast, Championship Leadership. What do you think of, or what comes to mind for you? What does championship leadership mean to you when you hear that?
It usually goes to the self. I think all leadership starts with yourself, and being able to lead yourself first and lead yourself, in your actions, in your thoughts, in your production. So I think leadership, to me, it really starts with leading yourself and becoming that example that you want others to follow or to see.
Yeah, and when you're talking about as a father, obviously that is extremely important when it comes to our kids. So tell me a little bit more about, like, how did First Class Fatherhood come all about? Like, a little bit more about your story and where this came from for you.
Yeah, absolutely, Nate. And the podcast itself started because I have 4 children. My 2 older ones wanted to start a YouTube channel.
Okay.
About a year and a half ago, and I didn't really know too much about it. I never had any social media accounts or nothing like that. So I was trying to tell them that if you're going to do this, you got to put some work into it. It's not just turning on a phone and fooling around. So I was trying to, study how to do that. And that's when I discovered podcasts, because I didn't know what a podcast was. And I saw that it was audio only. And I said, well, this got to be a little bit easier. And I said, let me try to get something going so they could see me putting the work in and the effort into building a podcast and something like a YouTube channel, which I'm not on YouTube. I mean, I just started uploading content on there now, but I focused mainly on the podcast. Yep. And I used this idea that was already bothering me and a message that I really wanted to put out there about fatherhood, just because I drive Uber on the weekends. And so many young men have this negative outlook on what fatherhood and family is really all about. So I kind of wanted to set that record straight and change the narrative on what fatherhood is really all about. So that was kind of the genesis of where it began.
Yeah, that's incredible. And you, how many episodes are you in? So this was just not that long ago.
I just put out 272 yesterday.
Wow, that's incredible. So yeah, we'll talk about that. So we are always communicating a message, right? Especially as leaders, especially as parents, husbands or spouses, business leaders, whatever arena you're in, and you have people watching you or following you, like, we're always communicating a message. It's almost always more what you're not saying and what you're doing versus what the words that are coming out of our mouth, right? So I love that you just sort of like, hey, children, you want to start this YouTube channel. Well, there's some work that needs to be done. And then that blossoms into you being like, well, let's lead by example. Is that something that was important to you, or is that something that was modeled to you growing up? Because I don't think that's necessarily natural for a lot of leaders out there to do that.
No, and that's not really the way I've led my entire life. Far from it. It took a lot of disaster, failure, and just a lot of life circumstances to come around to that point. I grew up with a totally different philosophy. I had a different outlook on life myself, where it was all about, for me, taking advantage of people and hustling and conning people. And I had a different mindset where the only way to really get ahead was to get over. Mm-hmm. And it led me down a lot of, dark paths, a lot of trouble in my life, and, disaster eventually. So it didn't just happen overnight. This is something that I've had to actually put the work in on and work on myself, and I'm still a work in progress. And I'm just dedicated to the, to the system right now that's working, to the mindset and the philosophy that's helping me right now achieve better results.
So what was that shift for you? What made the shift, or what started to make the shift from getting over on people to really, like, being the example for people?
Yeah, I don't think it's any one thing, Nate. I think it just happens to be, a compiling of different things. I mean, I'm a recovering alcoholic, recovering addict. I was a big time gambler. Just always had side jobs where I was hustling everything. I mean, my father was a used car salesman over in the Bronx. I kind of grew up with that mindset of the salesman and trying to manipulate people and always trying to get over on them. And it led me down, to that path of, followed drinking and smoking and drugs. And it was just more of a lifestyle I couldn't wait to get into, to be honest with you. I really, that's all I really wanted to be, was a hustler and a con man. And that's what I became. And it took a lot of, a lot of changes in my life. I mean, I got a DWI when I was 19 before I was even legally old enough to drink, and just different things that happened over the course of my life. And I started to, have some serious thoughts at some point that I need to make some changes here, that especially because I was a husband, I became a father, and I was really taking some serious looks at who I've become and where I was going. And I really wanted to make some changes. And that's where it kind of started. I started to ask some questions and seek, and then I started to find some answers.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important that we do take the lessons, the lumps that we've had along the way, and to help shape and mold who we become, hopefully for the better. And so it's good to hear that's part of your journey, your process as well. Talk to me a little bit more about your podcast, because it seems like, you look through the list of the guests, there's a lot of recognizable, well-known names of other fathers, celebrities, athletes, actors. Like, I imagine it didn't just happen overnight where, hey, I'm going to start this podcast and I'm going to get Tom Brady to come on my show. Like, how did that process happen for you? And I'm starting to see how it happened, just from your background of being a hustler, not afraid to work, not afraid to probably have conversations and go out and create what you have created. But yeah, talk to us about how you really went from starting a podcast, knowing who you are and where you're coming from, to in a short period of time, really some of the success that you've had inside of that.
Yeah, and I'll get to that in a second here, but you mentioned with Tom Brady, that's the turnaround actually of how drastic it's been, because when I was 20, I got a lifetime ban from Giant Stadium, and then turn the clock forward, and then you fast forward the clock a little bit, and then there I am on the field at the Super Bowl interviewing the greatest player to ever play the game. So that's the type of turnaround that this was. And really, just in terms of the podcast, it's really, people ask me all the time, like, how the hell are you getting all these guests on your show? Because I'm a railroad mechanic. I have zero communication or media experience whatsoever. And so that's always the number one question that I get, is how do you get these people on the show? And the truth is, the major thing that I have done is gotten myself into the mindset of believing that they will come on to my podcast. Like, I don't have a shadow of a doubt in my mind why these people would want to call me, because if I did, they wouldn't be calling me. Right. I think you really have to believe it and truly believe it, not just be faking it till you make it, but you really got to believe in what you're doing. And I really believe in the message, and I really had no doubt that these people would want to call me on the phone and talk about it. So that's what led to the, to a lot of the guests coming on. I mean, one of the very first ones that helped a lot was Dean Cain. When I had him on, I think it was episode 47. And so I was 47 episodes in when I had Dean Cain on. And when he came on the show, he really enjoyed the experience, the conversation. He liked the philosophy of the show. And so he blasted it out on his social media, on his Twitter and his Instagram, and that helped get the ball rolling a little bit. And then you kind of build from each guest that you get, and each one makes it a little easier to get another guest. And that's really how it works, as far as I could see anyway. And now, I mean, I just had a phone call yesterday with Dana White, the UFC president. So I'm going to be putting that episode out on Friday. But it's guys like that I've had the honor to speak with now, especially the men and women, men of our military, a lot of the Navy SEALs, which obviously I do every week. I do a Frogman Friday episode where I bring on a Navy SEAL, and those are the best conversations that I have, because I really admire their mindset. And it's a lot of the books of the SEALs that I've read that really started the mind shift in my own self. So I really love when I get a chance to speak to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've had the honor of bringing a few Navy SEALs on myself, and I'm a military guy. So I feel the same way. And that's incredible. That's really awesome. And I love the mindset, because I'm all about mindset. Just ran 100 miles this past year and wrote a book called The 100 Mile Mindset. So I definitely resonate with that, and just that belief in yourself and who you are, and why wouldn't, we're all people, right? We all put our pants on the same way. And so, yeah, it's incredible to hear. And I think it's really important for other people to hear as well, just that message that there's no reason you shouldn't be able to do that. Who are some people in your life, when I think of a championship level leader, like Bill Belichick comes to mind, Nick Saban, I'm a football guy. So these leaders that have won and won consistently at a high level, but just knowing also the backstory of like, it wasn't always that way for them either. And so maybe who are some of the people directly, indirectly that were really those level of leaders for you, kind of paved the path for you, that you learn from, that you look up to in your life, that have really impacted where you're at today?
Yeah, well, and first of all, thank you for your service, Nate, too. And a lot of it for me, really the big shift for myself all began with reading. And reading is something that I started to fall in love with, where I was somebody that never read a book other than maybe one or two books during my school days that I kind of, didn't really pay attention to. But I never actually read a book until I started this journey. And once I started reading, I really fell in love with it. And then I'm a ferocious reader. Like now I read at least a book every week. Usually I read the book, and then if the book is available on audio, I listen to it again just to kind of get the double imprint. But a lot of the guys that I started to read were like James Allen, Napoleon Hill, Dale Carnegie. I mean, all these guys that I started to read really started to shape and change my whole belief system and my whole mindset. So a lot of it came from those guys, and then starting to, listen to and read more personal development. And that's really what led to the path of a lot of the changes. I put, guys like Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohn, Les Brown. I mean, just all these guys, a collection of just constantly reading all of their material really helps to help shape my philosophy. And I realized that I had my thinking pattern all wrong. I mean, I'm a faith-based person as well. I read, a lot of the Bible, and I take a lot of the influence comes out of there as well. I mean, that's where I use this entire philosophy. I'm very amateur when it comes to the scripture stuff, but it's, whatsoever you ask for in prayer, believe you have received it and it will be yours. So I've kind of applied that technique to what I'm doing here, and the results have been astounding. And once you start to see the results, you never, travel back to that old way of thinking anymore.
That's beautiful. Yeah. I mean, you named some of the Mount Rushmores of personal development, right? Some of the bigs, the greats, but what I love, and then of course, the Bible and Christ, there's no one greater than that. So it's just the fact that not only do you read until you listen, but you actually implement and apply into your life. And how important that is, because a lot of people consume information. A lot of people go to seminars and take notes, and they read books, and then they kind of put it up on the shelf and never visit it again. And so, yeah, with the importance of not only investing in yourself, but then going out and putting it into play, right?
Yeah, well, it's faith without works is dead, right? And everybody likes affirmations, but affirmations not followed by action and discipline is the beginning of delusion. So it's just really, you do have to apply what you're reading and what you're learning, and it will actually make the changes in your life. I mean, I know, like I said, one of the Navy SEALs that I've interviewed on the show, Tom Shea, wrote a book called Unbreakable, and he talks in there all about the inner dialogue, your inner conversations that you have that are taking place in everybody's mind that are nonstop 24/7. And it's those that if you can shape and change the inner conversations in your mind, you can change the outer circumstances of your world. And when you actually put that to the test, you will see the results. And that's why it becomes like almost addictive when you start doing it. I have an addictive personality to start with. So better to be this way than the way that I was. And you see, when you start to, and I think as I said, like, if you want to be successful, study success. And if you start to study these successful people and see what they're doing, I mean, there's a formula and a blueprint that they leave behind. And if you just mimic it or pick up a few of the things that they're doing, you slowly start to see results, and they definitely change.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it really is that easy, but it's not easy, right? I mean, it takes commitment and consistency, which I hear you saying is just this not, put it into practice, but being committed to it and having, I guess, again, it comes back to that belief, that faith, that it will work out in what you're doing and the path that you're on. Talk to me a little bit about vision. Championship leaders, they have this incredible vision. And a lot of times it's the vision that everyone else looks at and they're like, you're crazy. Like, what do you, and it's something that they can't see, but that's why they're the great leaders, because they see things that others can't, and they have that belief in it, and they're like, no, this is where we're going, like this is why we're doing it, and they get everybody on board, and they rally the troops, right, and then they go make it happen. What's that vision for you?
Yeah, well, that's what it is. If you could see it in your mind, you can hold it in your hand. I mean, that's just it. I mean, everything that's here at one point was only somebody's, in somebody's imagination, somebody's thoughts. I mean, that's really where it all generates from. And a lot of people have that mentality. I was one of these people that had the mentality of, I'll believe it when I see it. Like, that's the way I always was. I was always that guy, like, you ain't gonna fool me. I'll believe it when I see it. And I used to have that mentality. And then I realized that it's once you believe it, then you'll see it. And then
Yeah.
when I started to change that around, that's when a lot of this stuff started to change for me. Like when you start changing the way you look at things, all the things you look at start to change.
Yeah. What are, if you could share with the listeners here, what are one or two, I'll call them turning points or like critical moments in your life where, had you not made the decision to go maybe right when everybody else is going left, right? Kind of the safe play or the way that everybody else would want you to go. Had you decided to take that path versus the less traveled path, right? There's a book called The Road Less Traveled. If you were, championship level leaders, you take that road less traveled, and it has you exactly where you are today. But had you not in one or two of these critical moments, could you share with us? Because we all have them, right? Whether it's rock bottom for us, and we don't know what to do, and just having the courage in that critical moment to make the decision that has you where you are today. Are there one or two that you could share with us and with the listeners?
Yeah, it's tough to kind of say, Nate, because I've made a lot of the mistakes that have actually, if I didn't make them, I don't think I would be who I am today. So without making these crucial errors, and I've made some very bad choices in my life. And I think one thing that impacted me, I mean, my parents both passed away 4 months apart before I met my wife and even started having children. And those were obviously moments that really impacted me where, they started to shape a lot of different things and at the time, a lot of different mistakes that I was making. But I think just making the decision to get sober and stay sober and finally submit, or however you want to call it, just kind of give up this idea of battling with drugs and alcohol, I think was the biggest thing that's ever happened in my life. I mean, I was struggling with oxycodone, smoking a half an ounce of weed every week. I mean, I was drinking a quarter of vodka every day. I mean, I was really hitting it hard. And if I didn't make a change somewhere, I mean, my father passed away of cirrhosis of the liver. It's just the results of alcohol and usage in my family has been devastating. And that's the path that I was definitely headed on. So if I didn't make a change there, something would drastically come to an end for me. Especially I was driving. I definitely would have ended up in jail, dead, all the usuals that people say. If you don't straighten out, that's where you're headed. I mean, the cemetery is full of people that didn't make those changes. So it was really just one of those. I don't know if there was any one moment where it happened, but it was just over a course of just getting constantly beat down. Was like, all right, I'm tired of getting my ass kicked here, and I gotta make some serious changes in my life, and then there was a big, another disastrous point there where a childhood friend of mine, my longest friend that I've ever had, I was the godfather of one of his children. He's the godfather of one of mine, and he committed suicide. And I had been on the wagon for a while there when that happened, and I fell off, and it was hard for me to get back on, and it was just another one of those moments that were really troubling in my life to kind of try to process and get through. So those are definitely some of the moments that have added up over the years.
Yeah. And how long has it been since you made the decision to finally just leave all that behind?
Yeah, it almost coincides with when I started the podcast. I'm about a year and a half sober just about now. So I'm not a guy that counts days. I don't get involved in all that. I'm not an AA person. Not that I don't believe in it. I know the program is fantastic. I know many people that have benefited from it. It's just it's not my way of doing it. My way of living. But I believe in a lot of the principles of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I have friends similar to you where they were able to beat some addictions without it. And then I got a few that are very involved in it. So yeah, it's kind of really, I think, depends on the person, but
Yeah, and going back to what you said about vision there, Nate, it's the hardest part of it really is can you vision yourself as a non-smoker, as a
Mhm.
non-drinker, as a non-user? And that's really
Yeah,
where, like, if you can't get that image in your head, then you're just battling against the wall because you have no way to make any progress. If you still see yourself as a drinker, you're going to be one, you know? So it's
yeah,
changing that vision of who you believe yourself to be or who you think you are. When you can change that, you literally will become somebody else.
yeah. Well, what is your vision for First Class Fatherhood? Like, what do you really want to accomplish through what you're doing?
Right now, I want to continue to grow the audience. It's growing at a fast rate right now, so I want to keep expanding it out there. Eventually, probably do some more live video interviews, some on-site interviews, and just grow it as big as I can. I plan on writing a book to follow up with the interviews that I've done in the first year and a half.
Hmm.
And do some more speaking engagements. I'll be speaking in February at the Dad 2.0 Summit in Washington, D.C. as one of the keynote speakers there for that. So just really kind of taking some of these offers as they come and continuing to hone my craft, continue to develop myself, into what I'm doing here. It's all still very new to me.
Yeah,
So just continue to learn, grow, change, develop, and see, how big I can take it. Continue to think big with it.
yeah, yeah. I love it. Let's as we start to wrap up here, like, what are one or two things that you could provide to the audience? And I think my audience is a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of men and women, successful business owners, but they want to grow. They want to get a little bit better in life as a leader, as a husband, as a father, as a mother, as a spouse, right? And yeah, they're just always looking to get a little bit better in life. So what are one or two things that you could take and give them that they could then go and put into play for them, for their lives?
Yeah, I would just say to read. That's the biggest thing is to educate yourself, and that's what's happened to me. It's been the biggest change in my life is just the ability to read and gain knowledge. Because I think it was said like formal education can make you a living, self education can make you a fortune, and it's just a matter of there's people out there who have done all this stuff before, so look to them, read their stories. That's the biggest thing, and it's just have faith. You have to believe in what you're doing and create this vision for yourself and hold true to it, even despite all the things in your world or all your senses that'll deny what it is that you're trying to do. You have to remain faithful to it because you're going to be put to the test. It's almost like the minute you start a new garden, the weeds already start to come in to try to overtake it. And that's what happens when you have a new idea or a fresh vision. All of a sudden, all these circumstances start to come in, people doubting you, things will happen to make you question it. And if it'll really test how strong you are in your faith. So just remain faithful to the vision that you have and don't take no for an answer.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, and also, like, what I hear what I'm learning from you is just, man, if there's something out there that you want to do, like, go do it and have that belief in yourself. Like, if you want to start the podcast, I know lots of people that they think about starting the podcast, they think about writing the book, but they never quite go and do it. And I mean, just to see where you've come, you're like, hey, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to go all in. There's no reason I can't get Tom Brady, Deion Sanders, Rob O'Neill, all those people, Ed Milet, all these people that we recognize and know, and you've gone out and done it. It's just a testament that, like, I had this with a client today. She was like, I don't know if I can do this. And I'm like, how do you know that you can do it? And she's like, I don't know. I'm like, because I do it, because so-and-so does it. Like, if someone else can do it, like, then you can do it too. Right. And so that's what I'm getting from you here today.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened. Like the first guy that broke like the 5-minute mile or whatever it was, all these things that everyone thinks
Yeah.
is impossible until somebody, then once that one guy did it, the next year, like 10 people did it, then
Yeah.
20
Right.
people did it. And it's just
Right.
because once you believe it can be done, and that's all you have to do. That's why I say look for people that have been successful, because if they can do it, you can do it. And it's the same thing with this podcast. If I can do this, then certainly anybody can do it, because I didn't even know what a podcast was a year and a half ago.
Yeah. Right.
So just get out there and get after it, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you. And just let us know, the listeners, how can they find out more about you, your podcast, what you got going on?
Yeah, I'm everywhere. iTunes or Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, wherever you can listen to podcasts. Basically, you'll find First Class Fatherhood. You can visit me on firstclassfatherhood.com. I'm on Instagram at Alec Lace and at First Class Fatherhood. So I'm pretty much everywhere. If you Google First Class Fatherhood, I'll show up somewhere in the results there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get everything tagged up in the show notes as well. And so, Alec, I just really appreciate you taking some time out of your day to be here with me today and to be here with us on Championship Leadership. Thank you.
You got it. Thank you, Nate, for having me. It was an honor.
You bet.